Hey everyone, welcome back to DWeb Decoded, a podcast by Filecoin Foundation that explores the intersection of blockchain and the data economy. I'm your host, Aaron Stanley, and today we're talking to Maurício Magaldi, who's the head of product for Midnight at Input Output. Midnight is a really exciting new chain built with privacy and data protection functionality, so we're going to be diving into that here today with Maurício. With that, Maurício, great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Awesome. So for folks who don't know, maybe kind of give us the TLDR background on like what you guys are building at Midnight, and then we can kind of dive into your personal journey from there.
Yeah, so Midnight is a input-output project. Input-output is the engineering company that built Cardano. And Midnight is appropriately a partner chain to Cardano that's focused on what we call rational privacy or programmable privacy. The goal of Midnight is to enable people and businesses to come into the world of Web3, but keep their data as private as they need to in any particular use case. So me being a former chief data officer and a crypto enthusiast for so long, it's kind of the holy grail for me. And it's also one big unlock in terms of adoption, because companies have a private side and a public side, and public chains only have a public side. So it's a little bit of both. And I think the people that are building on it and will be building on it will be very interested in being able to manage how private or how public that information can be, which is something very unique in the value proposition of Midnight. So we find ourselves running a testnet right now, and we just recently announced our airdrop, which is the Glacier drop, in our tokenomics white paper. And we're gearing up to do that. The Glacier drop will happen on Cardano because it's a Cardano partner chain. And later in the year, we're planning the launch of the Midnight mainnet. So there's a lot going on, long days, long hours, but a lot of excitement building something that is very unique and that would help us sort of reclaim our privacy back, which is kind of lost in these days of the internet. So looking forward to seeing what the builders are going to come up with once we launch.
Very cool. Yeah, definitely doing the Lord's work there with trying to reclaim privacy, right? It's one of these things that's, it's not default like we may wish it was, but got to be intentional about this. Got to keep building new things, trying new solutions. So props to you guys for doing that. And I want to dive into some more of the specifics around Midnight, but maybe first, maybe just kind of tell us a bit about, how you ended up in this role. I know you've been around for a while. You've been, you're IBM, you're at 11FS. Also a prolific podcaster. Maybe give us some more background on just how you got into this this spot.
Yes, this is all that is. I've been in crypto. I count my entrance into crypto from when I read the Bitcoin white paper back in 2014. That was like a punch in the face and a wake up call to decentralization. More importantly, then over the years, just studying the tech, the use cases, found Ethereum, found other blockchains from that era, had a great opportunity to be the first person to lead blockchain services for Latin America at IBM. Great experience, albeit more focused on the enterprise use cases and permissioned networks at that time. And one of the things that kind of harkens back to that era is the fact that we couldn't really promise privacy, even using permission chains. So every time someone from the IBM sales unit would reach out like, hey, can we go talk to this health company about blockchain? And I'm like, no, we can't. Do not take me there. I don't want to be the one responsible for spilling out, immutably the medical records of thousands of people. That's not what this is good for right now. And, fast forward to now, we have zero knowledge proofs and multi-party computations and fully homomorphic encryptions, which are all different forms of privacy-enhancing technologies. And Midnight delivers programmable zero knowledge privacy into the world of blockchain. So I think that's kind of a little bit of like a callback to the era where blockchains were a thing, but they didn't do the thing that some of these companies really needed. After my stint with IBM, I went back to working as a banking professional, building businesses and products in banking, and then got this invite to come over to the UK from Brazil to work with 11FS for a couple of years. In the wake of the FTX and SVB and all that 2022 crisis, there was this Midnight project emerging from Input Output. They needed someone to run the product department, and I, fortunately got selected for that. Right now, I manage the product design and the product management teams, also the marketing and technical writing teams for Shielded, which is this spin-out company that we're in the process of building out of Input Output, which is very interesting for us in terms of building a decentralized ecosystem. We recently announced the Midnight Foundation at Consensus a couple of weeks ago. So it's taking shape. It's been a long time coming and a lot of work, but it's just so exciting. It's very much a privilege to work in this industry.
Very cool. Very cool. And I want to double click on some of the points you made about Midnight, but let's first I'm interested in just what's the relationship with Cardano exactly? You kind of mentioned that there's they're kind of related, they're like sisters or cousins in a sense, or maybe talk about what that relationship is exactly.
So Cardano is a layer one. It's been running for over 7 years now. It's a very science-based, technical-oriented ecosystem. And being built by Input Output, they explored the concept of both building this programmable privacy chain, but in the context of Cardano, inheriting some of Cardano characteristics such as security. And Midnight is the entire concept of Midnight is built across 6 or 7 research papers that Input Output has put out over the years, including Minotaur and Catena. Minotaur, funny enough, was co-written by the founder of Eigenlayer with the IO team. And that kind of outlines how you can inherit security from one protocol to another. And in that context is how Midnight is secured by inheriting Cardano security from Cardano SPOs, which are the Cardano version of validators. So you stake with an SPO, and then that SPO can register to become a block producer on Midnight until Midnight can expand in having its own staking mechanisms. That is a launch procedure for a partner chain in the context of Cardano. So that's how he relates to Cardano. People tend to pull the conversation into, oh, this is a layer one, this is a layer two, what the hell it is. And Midnight has its own consensus, it has its own finality. It doesn't roll into Cardano, so it cannot necessarily be called a layer two. That's why we don't use that term. But it is a partner chain in the concept that is kind of defined and outlined by the Minotaur paper. So yeah, we're happily exploring that space, and there's so much more to come in the roadmap. I'm looking forward to make the roadmap more public as we roll into the mainnet launch, because I think there's still a lot of innovation to come even after we launch. So we're not going to stop. I tell my team that when we launch mainnet is when we earn the right to continue to build, and that's exciting to me.
Awesome. That makes a lot of sense. The partner chain framing, because it's you're inheriting kind of this shared security vis-a-vis kind of the same way that you would with an Eigenlayer or Symbiotic or one of these other platforms. But it's not layer two. It's not its own layer one. You're kind of borrowing some of the features from Cardano or the security feature functionality, and then once it gets to the point where Midnight's large enough to secure its own, provide its own security, you can kind of blast off essentially and become your own thing. Is that the right way to think about it?
The Minotaur paper actually defines what we call the multi-resource consensus, is the ability of a system to be secured by more than one type of resource. So Ada from Cardano starts that journey with Midnight. Then we would expand this to Night, which is Midnight's own native crypto, and it could be expanded to other systems like Ethereum and Bitcoin and whatnot. So we're very early in that exploration and making that reality possible for something like Midnight. But there are scenarios in which, depending on how this thing progresses, we can have Midnight in a combination of multiple resources, ADA, ETH, Bitcoin, Night. So it will be interesting to see what the optimum is and how the actual block producers react to the opportunity of securing more than one chain with their like a minimal upgrade on their stack. So we're early days on that. But I think if we're talking interoperability, which is a big adoption catalyst for blockchains in general, we also have to talk about shared security like that, because it's just strengthening the entire industry in a way. So yeah, super excited about all this.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, it's super interesting. It's been fun to see this new paradigm of shared security really kind of take off the last couple of years, right? It seems like it's launched a lot of really interesting innovation that would have been otherwise possible, and it provides almost more of like a turnkey solution for people that are looking to develop, either their own chain or their own, sort of, or it's just, it's just significantly less resources you need to bootstrap something that you would on your own. In another circumstance.
Yeah, I think bootstrap is kind of the right term to use, right? You're actually launching from something else that predecessor to you, which also speaks to the resilience of this industry over these many years, being attacked from multiple fronts and just working tirelessly to innovate in ways to make things more palatable. We're seeing great strides in user experience currently. I mean, I have friends working in a variety of spaces. Shout out to Jazz at Reon and Wallet Connect. There's a big pull in UX without compromising security, which is important. So yeah, it's the coming of age.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, maybe let's kind of double click on like some of the key features of Midnight. I'm really interested to just learn a bit more about some of the cryptography that you mentioned, and like how that's being used to essentially, as far as what I understand, like you're able to basically provide like kind of selective disclosures of data, right? So like the data would be basically, like, if I'm understanding correctly, would be kind of default private, but then there's ways that you can basically selectively disclose information to select parties that have access via whatever authorization sort of mechanism. But maybe feel free to riff on that, and what are some of the other kind of core features here that you're excited about.
Yeah, I think the thing that kind of underpins the selective disclosure for us is called Catena. Catena is one of the papers in which Midnight is based on, and Catena defines on-chain state and off-chain state. And the on-chain state is where the proofs are written, and on the off-chain state is where the data lives. The off-chain state is actually a device. It's your device, your computer. And therefore, you as a developer or you as a user can decide how much of that can be exposed. So to the people who are paranoid, your data never leaves your device. What leaves your device is the proof about your data. And then as a developer, you can gradually offer ways to expose that data, whether on or off chain, depending on the use case. I made a mention earlier about medical records. Think about your blood scan, right? Your blood scan is part of your medical records. You could turn every measurement on your blood scan into a proof, in the sense that instead of saying Maurício has X amount of glycemic index, you can generate a proof about it and say Maurício has less than or more than or between A and B, which is a cryptographic proof, is more of a Boolean answer. And because that is, it's meaningless to anyone who is not in the context of the proof, it can be recorded immutably on the chain. And that's what Midnight in the Catena architecture do for privacy. And therefore, as you program more or less data, you have more or less proof on the chain as you push out the transactions and write the transactions on chain. So that's kind of where this thing lands. To me, being this, for this long in the industry, and being also, former enterprise professional and, now professional DGen, there is an intersection there that says most people in the business sense wouldn't expose their strategic and competitive differentiator data on an immutable public database. And with Midnight, they don't need to. They need to push out only the proof about the data that's useful to propel that use case or that business process forward. So that's kind of where I think Midnight will excel.
Yeah, well, we've seen this issue pop up in a lot of different financial, like financial related blockchain networks, right? I think even specifically about Brazil, right, where you have like the central bank Drex project, where they've been trying to wrestle with this issue of like you have this whole network of different banks, consortium banks that are involved in this network. They're all running nodes on this blockchain, like a Hyperledger Bazoo chain in this instance. But they're running into this issue of, okay, how can we basically shield, like you don't want the banks to be all knowing exactly what their competitor banks are doing as far as transaction volumes and clients and all these types of things. So you can encrypt all that stuff, right? But then the central bank, as sort of the overlord of that whole network, is going to want visibility into that system, right? You can't just have people, running around or you can't have these transactions just running around and firing with no visibility from like a supervisory node, essentially. And I think it's an interesting example of like this type of conundrum where, like, we want it to be, if you're using blockchain in these kind of enterprise contexts, it's like, okay, we want encryption, we want data protection, we want privacy, we want all this stuff, but only up to a certain amount, because like somebody has to be like the supervisor of this, whether that be the regulator, or whether it be kind of the bank that's like running the consortium or something. So I feel like, and we're starting to see a lot of interesting new solutions popping up that are addressing this problem, where I think, yeah, back in the day, like you mentioned, it was just like there's just no like it doesn't work, so don't even bother asking, right?
Yeah. Well, I think there's also an aspect of this that is there are laws that are kind of focused on protecting data. So you have GDPR in Europe, LGPD in Brazil, HIPAA, I think, in California, in the US. They're all examples of data protection regulation that a business has to abide to. You also have banking secrecy acts, laws that mandate that your bank cannot break your banking secret unless there is, say, a subpoena, right? These are all instances of selective disclosure in the centralized world. When you talk about implementing things on a blockchain, which is inherently decentralized, well, then you start to run into situations where, well, if I have to achieve consensus and I have to broadcast transactions across multiple nodes, or if I have to post a transaction to the mempool and then now the block producer sees that is a problem in light of those regulations. So you have to have different mechanisms in which you can pass on information about a transaction without necessarily revealing the underlying data. And that's what zero-knowledge proofs do. And that's how we're implementing Midnight to solve for. That's kind of where the catch is. Because if you talk to cryptographers and you say, okay, so I'll encrypt that, and then I'll write it on the blockchain, they'll say, well, everything that can be encrypted can be decrypted. And eventually it will. So that's probably not the best way to ensure that there are a perennial validity to the privacy of those data elements in light of a regulation. So there are some of those challenges. So if that can never be decrypted, then you're in line with the regulation. And if you have any particular mechanisms for exposing the data when needed for the parties that have the right to be viewing that data, then you are within the regulation, and you can do that on a decentralized manner. That's how Catena envisioned that early on, and that's how we're bringing Catena to life through Midnight.
Very cool. Very cool. Let's talk a bit about just use cases, and maybe what are some things that people are building on Midnight on testnet at the moment, and like what are you guys expecting to see, once mainnet goes live? Like what are some of the verticals or use cases that you think this is like really primed to kind of to really stand out?
Yeah, I mean, regulated industries for sure. There are people building on the testnet already that are in the regulated industries. I think DeFi is kind of an obvious one, especially if you think about regulated DeFi, where you can't disclose about data about your portfolio because otherwise you'd be revealing your strategy. But if you want to leverage the assets on your portfolio, you might need to be able to provide a proof of that particular strategy without revealing what it is. So some of these things are absolutely use cases that are bound to happen. one that I wasn't expecting, and I keep saying this, it's pretty funny one. I'm not a gamer anymore, but video games can leverage zero knowledge proofs for a variety of use cases. And I was like, okay, that is an interesting thing, because and also that's the beauty of building for builders. They will take the technology and take them to a place where you didn't foresee at first. But that's how we build this, and that's why we build things for builders, is for them to extend what you originally thought possible. So yeah, game development is in that space. And financial services for sure, healthcare for sure, and I'm excited to see more government, because if there's a particular sector of the economy in general that we should demand more transparency, or the right level of transparency from, is government. But not everything can be brought into the blockchain from a government standpoint. So what if we can make it a selective disclosure and a provable point on how the laws are being made and how the budget is being spent, and have a little bit more publicity, but they're at the right level? I think would be interesting to see governments running on a programmable or rational privacy chain for specific use cases. That would be very interesting to see.
And then I guess one other question here would be, how does Midnight perhaps differ from some of these other privacy focused chains that we've seen popping up, like things like Aztec, or like perhaps even Secret. Secret's been around for a while longer, but like I'm not really sure what status of it. But we're seeing more of these kind of like privacy focused chains popping up. And I guess they're all kind of using some of the same terms, like, we're using zero knowledge and MPC and all this kind of stuff. But like, how do you guys maybe like differentiate from what some of these other folks are building in kind of the privacy chain space?
Yeah, I think the use of Catena as a basis is very different. The whole that data never leaves your device unless you really want to, and being able to articulate the data in a zero knowledge proof that can continuously be of service to a running smart contract is what I think makes that big of a difference. We do have a TypeScript based language called Compact, which allows you to code smart contracts using that architecture. It's also a UTXO ledger, just like Bitcoin, but you can actually control account state level in the smart contract. So it's kind of a hybrid type ledger as well. So there are a bunch of innovations in that space that I think set Midnight apart from the other chains that are trying to address the same problem through different lenses. But what I think, me being a former, formerly in the banking space, I'm drawn to tokenomics. And I think we just released the tokenomics paper last week. The tokenomics that we designed for Midnight is very unique. It has a private resource we call Dust. It's a shielded resource, so you don't track metadata, so you can't correlate use of the chain with wallets and other types of activity. And it also protects you from being exposed. So you can use Midnight all you want, and you'll never see your activity or metadata represented on chain because it's shielded. On the other end, we have a governance token, which is called Night. And Night is a unshielded token. So it works as any other UTXO token, with the exception that it generates dust. So the unshielded token generates the shielded resource. And you pay fee with dust, so you don't have to get rid of your governance token to use Midnight. So in a nutshell, if you have access to Night, you can pretty much use Midnight for free. So that I think would be something that will see a lot of enterprise adoption, because to a certain extent, you can actually predict how much these things are going to cost to you at any point in time. You don't have to buy and sell the underlying cryptocurrency to pay for gas fees, because that's just not how the system works. Right? Once you have the governance token, you can produce your own fee resource and pay for Midnight processing capacity using that. So I think that's a very unique value proposition. I've been much more successful explaining this to CFOs than explaining Why would I buy a token that is super volatile? And then by the time I want it to appreciate because it's sitting on my balance sheet, but by the time I'm going to use it, it's so expensive that it hurts my P&L. And then I have to recompose and build up, top up my balance again. And I don't know how much I'm going to pay for the next round of cryptocurrencies. So everything is volatile twice. When you say you buy once for whatever the price is, and you can, or if you're in the Glacier drop, you get dropped the Night token, and that will yield dust. Not yield in the sense of the investment. It will give you ability to produce the fee resource over time. Then the CFOs are like, oh, okay, so I don't have to spend the asset that I want to appreciate. No, you don't. And just as a reminder, none of this is financial advice. This is a mechanical example of how the Midnight tokenomics works. So I'm really proud of what the team put together. It's been many nights with insomnia trying to solve corner cases and exploits. But we had such a great help of the input-output family in general to just get this thing out the door. Shout out to Christos from Findas, one of our partners consulting on this, because it's a beautiful piece of work, and I encourage people to go read the paper because it is almost like a love letter to crypto, to be frank. It's pretty well written, and I think what we're bringing in that space, I know it's gonna kind of early days. It's gonna be seen as like just another innovation among many others that we're bringing to the table. But in the long run, when you think about economic sustainability, I think it's just gonna set Midnight apart, and hopefully it kind of inaugurates a new season for tokenomics in the cryptocurrency space. Because let's be honest. Meme coins with tokenomics just now, it's just like we kind of lost track of what the ethos of that was, and most of tokenomics are Ponzinomics. That's not the case at all for Midnight.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I've never heard of a model like that where you own the governance token that basically like is issuing the gas essentially that you need to use the network. You don't have to go out and buy the utility token. That because I think the utility token model to a lot of people just doesn't make. It's like, why would I need to go buy this token to pay for the thing? Why can't I just pay for the thing and
try to explain
dollars,
to a
right?
CFO that the more you own of that token, the more you own from that chain, but the more you use that chain, the less you own of it.
Yeah, like what's the point, right?
We got used to this. This is how we develop the entire industry. So I think that is, if nothing else, a big provocation piece, and hopefully a new season for tokenomics for sure, because it's a very elegantly designed, very elegant design, very elegantly written. I just hope people will take time to appreciate the effort that we put into this.
And shifting gears here a little bit, I know one of the subjects you've been interested in the past is like like SocialFi or these decentralized social type platforms, and I know you've been quite interested in this type of thing, and I know you've been also having some issues with LinkedIn of getting the algorithm hasn't been very
that's
favorable.
An understatement of the year, yeah.
So, but anyway, maybe I appreciate maybe share a bit about your experience and maybe anything in the blockchain realm that you think might be able to remedy what I think we've collectively been experiencing on some of these platforms.
Yeah, I'm a little bit hopeless. It's not that it's unknown, right? If you go back to Chris Dixon's Read Write Own, he explains well what the centralized platform model is. You create critical mass, and at some point, when your constituents are extracting more value than you are from the platform you built, you bait and switch, and then you start to extract value from them instead. We saw this with every platform in the history of the internet, and it's no different what I think is happening right now with LinkedIn. Their change in sponsored posts and more corporate type of content is obviously detrimental to people who like I do. I never thought of myself as a content creator of any kind. I just started Block Drops back in 2019 from the urge to do research on practical use cases of the blockchain technology, not trying to be the guy talking about token prices. I'm not a trader. I've never been a trader. So to me, those things are not necessarily of interest, but solving problems with tech always was. And that's why Block Drops kind of started. And all of a sudden I see myself, entangled on the LinkedIn ecosystem with, a growing community, people interested in coming to the show and talking to me about, you probably relate to this, but people, if you call people like, hey, do you have like 30 minutes so I can pick your brain? They will never say yes. But if you say, hey, do you have time to record a podcast about you or your stuff? They'll carve out the time. And I'm not judging. This is just the nature of the thing. And that opened a lot of doors. The reason why I ended up, landing in the UK and working for 11FS and now for Midnight is a testimony to the power of networking, which is what LinkedIn is no more. So it's been really hard to come to terms. I've been in the platform for over 20 years. It's been kind of weird to acknowledge that the cycle's ended. So now I'm just starting to do some more research into what are the alternatives. I just cracked open a Substack to just explore. Earlier this year, I kind of launched, I want to say, my own website and merch store. I'm just trying to find other ways, whether Web 2 or Web 3, to kind of get to the people who would be interested in what I have to say and, the findings, the research, and even my guests. I mean, you're alumni there. I think I had the privilege of interviewing what will be tomorrow 195 people.
Wow.
In this industry, from founders to engineers to security people to marketeers to, every stripe you can think of. The show has crossed 680 episodes total since it started. And this week was the first week that I didn't feel compelled to record the Drops episode. And I was like, yeah, maybe I should just, maybe it was the heat of the UK summer. These folks don't really know how to build a house for the heat. Maybe I was, my brain melted and I wasn't, just inclined in doing any of that. But maybe it's a combination of everything. And yeah, I tried Farcaster. I tried Lens when it launched. I haven't logged into Lens or Farcaster in a while. But it's also not my audience. My audience is the people who are trying to understand what Lens is, what Farcaster is, what they're good for, how they have been built, what are the decisions around bringing such a platform to life. So they're not there yet. So I have to meet people where they are so they look into what we've built so far and they get, an understanding of what that, so what is it good for me? Why should I pay attention to this? And not that I won't, I'm not going to kill the podcast. It's just maybe, sitting at least the Drops for now, or just focus on Block Talks, on the interviews. Because again, I love the people of Web3. Even though I hate people, I love the people of Web3. And hopefully we'll find, another means to get to the audience and get in front of the people that might benefit from the research that we do because I didn't stop researching. I'm a product person. That's what I do. Part of the time is to pay attention to what's happening in the landscape. And yeah, it's just one of those moments that you have to acknowledge, well, yeah, maybe this orange has given all the juice and it's time to move on.
Squeeze, yeah. The juice isn't worth the squeeze anymore, right?
Yeah.
Well, it does show. I think the lesson here is that, or I think for any creator is unfortunately that, like, you have to think about distribution the same way that you think about revenue as a business, right? Where it's like, as a business, you're trying to have diversify revenue streams. The more revenue streams you have, the more sort of protected you are against, one getting nuked and then, okay, we're still fine, right? Whereas a creator, I think there is this tendency to kind of over-index for the platform where you might be having the most success at any given point in time. And like in your case, it was LinkedIn, because like those are kind of the people that you're trying to reach, is sort of your not your traders or not your degens, but more of like your blockchain curious type people that work in companies and they need to know about this stuff, whatever. And I think LinkedIn was interesting because you had a very, it was very like, there's a lack of crypto content relative to other platforms, relative to X, Twitter and whatnot. So there's kind of a space there for people who wanted to jump in there.
Yeah, and it's also not the, you won't find the degen type of, dialogue or,
right.
the reply guy type stuff. So I had Amanda Week on my show a while ago, and we're comparing the differences between crypto Twitter and crypto LinkedIn, and how, a mix of these two demographics would be a very interesting combination for the industry to continue to evolve. And yeah, but I don't think crypto LinkedIn will be much longer because they clearly don't want people educating about this in the platform. I've been shadow banned. I've had content suspended, somewhat censored. The support team there even threatened me. You're gonna lose your rights. Yeah. But it all comes to the point where it is a centralized platform. It is somewhat free to use, quote unquote. And if the service is free, the product is you. And as a product, I'm realizing that, it might not be a platform worth my time anymore. So we'll see. I'm just, it is a kind of a gut reaction to the recent events. I will continue to do this. I have been doing this for 5.5 years. We're in the middle of season 6. Am I stubborn? Yes. Do I love doing this? Also, yes. Do I think this is still my way of connecting with people who are kind of wary of the industry and trying to, make sure that they understand that this is not everything is a Ponzi scheme. Not everything is a scam. There are serious people. Some of the brightest brains of our era are building this industry. Pay attention to this because, some of the things that we are going through in the world right now is over centralization. They are subject to that, and they're a byproduct of overly centralized institutions and platforms.
Yeah.
We're showing another path to another type of reality that we might want to engage on. Let's talk about it. Yeah.
No, very well said. Well, I guess to wrap up here, really exciting learning about what you're building at Midnight. I think the privacy chain thesis is definitely one that we need. Definitely one that, it's exciting to see these things finally, at the point where, shipping to mainnet sounds like later this year. And very important development for the industry, I think. And also on the tokenomics front, which I was not aware of, but thank you for the education on that, because that's a really interesting, this is, I agree, this is an area that unfortunately there hasn't really been as much innovation as I think people had thought there might be, right? I think, 10 years into this whole kind of tokenomics world, it's still kind of a junk science, unfortunately, for being really honest.
If you think about it, I think it's the first time in the history of the world that we've had so many people thinking about monetary policy at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. It's been 10, 12, 15 years that this industry was created.
Yeah.
And now, some of what we built in the industry is even challenging the real quote unquote monetary policy people, to the point where they're like, oh, we need a CBDC. Right. That's where we landed. That's how innovation happens, right? You push the envelope, the incumbents will react to it, maybe shut you down for a period of time, and they were going to realize, oh my God, this solves so many problems that I couldn't otherwise.
Yeah.
And maybe that's where we are right now. Burying, the cynicism and hypocrisy, this is where we are. I had this conversation the other day. There hasn't been a year in crypto since I started paying attention to this that the year was not better than the previous year. You can count FTX, Mt. Gox, whatever. The next year was better in a variety of ways, and probably in the sum of the parts. And if we can continue with that trend, there will be a point where we're going to reach escape velocity. And this is just what we do.
Yeah.
And I'm here for it.
Yeah. I definitely agree. The trajectory is clear, right? The trajectory's been up. There's bumps in the road. There's things get ironed out. There's incentives that need to be aligned, but the trajectory is always on an upward curve here, which I find exciting.
A lot to be weeded out. Let's not forget. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Well, cool, Mauricio. Really appreciate your time. Best of luck here with the on the roadmap with the mainnet launch later this year, and best of luck in your sojourning on social media away from LinkedIn. So hopefully,
we'll see. Maybe they listen. Maybe they'll. I don't know. Maybe they'll listen. Maybe they don't. I don't know. I'm not going to wait around.
But anyway, well, thanks, Mauricio, for your time, and maybe give a quick shout out. How can folks find you if they want to learn more about Midnight?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say find me on LinkedIn, but I'm not. So find me on Twitter. I can't say X. Sorry. Find me on Twitter. It's 0x Mauricio, the algorithm. 0x Mauricio. I'm also on Substack, blockdrops.substack.com, and I'm on my own website, blockdropspodcast.xyz. And we'll take it from there.
Cool.
Oh, and Midnight, of course. Why not? Go check Midnight. We have a big docs page, docs.midnight.network, and you can find more about everything else around Midnight on midnight.network.
Cool. All right. Well, Mauricio, thank you for your time, and thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next time on DWeb Decoded.